A 70-year-old woman cried at her son's grave, while her wealthy daughter-in-law laughed, embracing her young lover. Mrs. Miller was alone in her house, surrounded by memories of her beloved son, Alex. The walls were decorated with photographs of happy moments. Alex at his graduation, holding his first soccer trophy, smiling on family vacations. These memories, which once brought joy, now only accentuated the void left by his absence. The house was enveloped in a heavy silence. Only the faint ticking of the wall clock broke the stillness. Mrs. Miller, a 70-year-old woman, with her face lined with the wrinkles of life and her eyes dulled by pain, moved slowly through the rooms, touching each photograph gently, as if she could bring her son back, even if just for a moment. In the living room, she stopped in front of a particular photograph. Alex, a boy of about 7 years old, was next to her, both laughing heartily in a park. She remembered that day as if it had been yesterday. Alex had found a box full of abandoned puppies and, with his innate kindness, insisted they take them home to care for them. That was Alex's essence, always willing to help, always with a heart full of love and compassion. Mrs. Miller sighed deeply, feeling a pang of pain in her chest. Alex had grown into an exceptional man, full of dreams and aspirations. He had graduated with honors from university and founded his own law firm, dedicated to helping those most in need. But life had not been fair to him. Financial and personal problems had plagued him, and the lack of support from his wife Addison and her family had worsened his situation. Tears began to roll down Mrs. Miller's cheeks as she remembered Alex's funeral. The ceremony had been a somber event, but what had most surprised and disappointed her was Addison's attitude. Throughout the funeral, Addison had remained impassive, almost indifferent. While friends and family cried and said their goodbyes to Alex, Addison stayed distant, with a cold expression that puzzled everyone. Mrs. Miller had tried to understand Addison's behavior, but found no justification. Alex had given everything for his wife, and seeing her so uninterested in his departure was another blow to her already shattered heart. She clearly remembered how Addison had avoided eye contact, and how, even in the most solemn moments, she seemed more concerned about her appearance than the fact that she was burying her husband. That afternoon, Mrs. Miller decided to visit Alex's grave once more. The path to the cemetery was covered with dry leaves that crunched under her feet, and the cool autumn air blew gently, lifting the leaves in small whirlwinds. As she approached the grave, she felt her heart tighten more and more, as if each step brought her closer to a reality she still refused to accept. Upon arrival, she stopped in front of the headstone and knelt, placing a hand over Alex's name engraved in the stone. Tears welled up in her eyes as she spoke softly, as if her son could hear her from beyond. "My dear Alex, how I miss you. It hurts so much to see you here so far from home. I wish I had insisted more on bringing you back to the village, next to your father's grave. Here, I don't feel you so close." As Mrs. Miller poured out her pain, she heard laughter breaking the solemn silence of the cemetery. She looked up and saw Addison in the distance. The young woman was hugging a man whom Mrs. Miller did not recognize. They were laughing and kissing, oblivious to their surroundings. Mrs. Miller felt a mixture of disbelief and anger. How could Addison show such disrespect? The scene became even more unbearable when Addison approached, still laughing, and addressed Mrs. Miller with a mocking expression on her face. "I see you still come to cry for that poor fool," Addison said with disdain. "You should let him go. It makes no sense to keep clinging to him." Mrs. Miller felt her legs weaken and had to lean on the headstone to keep from falling. Addison's words were like knives stabbing her heart, but what shocked her the most was what Addison said next. "And by the way," Addison continued with disdain, "if you are hoping to meet your grandchild, I regret to inform you that you will never see him. I decided it wasn't worth having a child from someone like Alex." With those words, Addison turned and walked away, still laughing and embracing her lover. Mrs. Miller, paralyzed by shock and pain, could only watch them leave. Tears continued to fall, but now they were not only of sadness but also of deep indignation and a nascent determination. As she got up and headed back to her house, Mrs. Miller decided she had to find out the truth about Alex's supposed child. She couldn't let Addison get away with it. Alex deserved justice, and if there was indeed a child, He deserved to be protected and loved. Mrs. Miller swore she would do everything possible to find him and give him the home her son would have wanted for him. The walk back was a whirlwind of emotions for Mrs. Miller. Every step was laden with pain, but also with a fierce determination. Upon reaching her house, she sat at her desk, took out a sheet of paper, and began to write a list of people she needed to contact. She knew that Carlos, Alex's best friend, would be her first point of support. Carlos had always been close to Alex, and surely had valuable information. The sun was beginning to set when Mrs. Miller finished her list and put the sheet in her purse. She knew her journey to uncover the truth would not be easy, but she was determined to fight for her son's memory and for the future of his possible grandchild. With that resolve, she prepared for the battle ahead, feeling in her heart a spark of hope she had not felt since Alex's death. That night, as she lay in her bed, Mrs. Miller closed her eyes and whispered a prayer to her son, promising him she would find the baby and protect him with all her love. With that promise in mind, she drifted into a restless sleep, full of memories and renewed hopes. And so Mrs. Miller's journey began, a journey that would lead her to face her fears, uncover hidden truths, and find strength in adversity to move forward. The next morning, Mrs. Miller woke up with a renewed sense of purpose. She got up early, and after a light breakfast, went out in search of Carlos. The city was wrapped in an autumn atmosphere, with cool air and fallen leaves covering the sidewalks. As she walked, her mind was fixed on her goal, discovering the truth about Alex's supposed child. Upon reaching Carlos's office, an old friend of Alex's and a university companion, Mrs. Miller was warmly received. Carlos was a man in his 50s, with grey hair and kind eyes. Seeing her, he immediately sensed the gravity on her face and invited her to come in. "Claire, it's a pleasure to see you, though I imagine it's not for a good reason," Carlos said, inviting her to sit down. "Hello, Carlos. Yes, I needed to talk to you about something very important," Mrs. Miller replied, taking a seat in front of him. Carlos leaned forward, showing his willingness to listen. "What's going on? Is there something I can do to help?" Mrs. Miller sighed deeply before beginning. "Yesterday, while I was visiting Alex's grave, I ran into Addison. She was with another man, laughing and mocking. I can't believe that after everything Alex did for her, she treats him with such contempt." Carlos frowned, clearly disturbed by what he was hearing. "I'm so sorry, Claire. I knew Addison wasn't the best person, but this is unacceptable." "That's not all," Mrs. Miller continued, her voice trembling. "Addison mentioned something about a possible child of Alex. She said I would never see him because she decided it wasn't worth having a child from someone like him. Carlos, do you know anything about this?" Carlos nodded slowly, his eyes filled with sadness. "Yes, Claire, there's something you need to know. Addison tried to force a surrogate mother, Laura, to abort Alex's baby. Laura refused and disappeared to protect the baby. I've been trying to locate her, but so far I haven't been successful." Mrs. Miller felt a mixture of relief and concern. "So it's true there is a child? Where is Laura? We must find her, Carlos. I can't let Alex's child grow up without the love and protection he deserves." Carlos nodded, sharing her determination. "I've been looking for leads, but Laura has been very careful. She knew Addison would do anything to get rid of the baby, but I have some contacts who might help us. Let's start there." Determined to find Laura, Mrs. Miller and Carlos began contacting the people on their list. They spent hours making calls and visiting places, following every lead, no matter how small. The afternoon wore on, and though progress was slow, Mrs. Miller did not lose hope. With no findings the previous day, a new day dawned and Miller met with Carlos at a nearby cafe. Carlos was already there, waiting for her with a cup of coffee in hand and a folder of documents on the table. When he saw her, he smiled and motioned for her to sit down. "Good morning, Claire. Ready to start?" Carlos asked, with a mix of seriousness and empathy in his voice. "Yes, Carlos, I'm ready. We need to find Laura and the baby as soon as possible," Mrs. Miller replied, taking a seat. Carlos opened the folder and pulled out a list of contacts and places that might have information about Laura. "I made some calls this morning. I have some leads, but it's not going to be easy. Laura has been very careful not to be found." Mrs. Miller nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. "I understand, Carlos. We'll do whatever it takes. We can't let Addison get away with this." They began making calls and visiting the places Carlos had identified. They spent the morning following every lead, asking friends and acquaintances if they knew anything about Laura. Some people remembered seeing a pregnant woman who matched Laura's description, but no one knew where she was now. As the day wore on, frustration and exhaustion began to take their toll on Mrs. Miller. Every time a lead seemed promising, they hit a dead end. However, her determination did not wane. In the afternoon, they headed to a small women's shelter where Carlos had heard a pregnant woman had been asking for help. Upon arrival, they were greeted by the shelter's director, a kind and understanding woman named Anna. "Hello, I'm Carlos and this is Claire Miller. We're looking for a woman named Laura. She's pregnant and we believe she might have been here," Carlos explained. Anna looked at them with a mix of curiosity and concern. "Laura was here a few weeks ago. She was scared and didn't want to stay long. She told us she needed to stay hidden for her safety." Mrs. Miller's heart pounded upon hearing they were on the right track. "Please, Anna, can you tell us where she went? We need to find her. It's very important." Anna nodded slowly. "Laura mentioned she had a contact in a community on the outskirts of the city. She didn't give many details, but she seemed desperate to get there. I can give you the address she mentioned." With the new information in hand, Mrs. Miller and Carlos headed toward the community on the outskirts of the city. The journey was long, and the urban landscape gave way to more rural areas. Finally, they arrived at a small complex of modest apartments. They went to the address Anna had given them, and upon arrival, found themselves in front of an apartment with a worn wooden door. Carlos knocked gently on the door, and after a few moments of silence, a soft voice responded from inside. "Who is it?" the voice asked cautiously. "Laura, I'm Carlos, a friend of Alex. I'm here with Alex's mother, Claire Miller. We need to talk to you, please," Carlos replied firmly but kindly. The door slowly opened, revealing Laura, a young woman with a face marked by fatigue and worry. Upon seeing Mrs. Miller, her eyes softened and a spark of hope seemed to ignite in them. "Please come in," Laura said, opening the door completely. Mrs. Miller and Carlos entered the modest apartment. The walls were bare and the furniture was sparse, reflecting the difficulties Laura had been facing. Laura invited them to sit on the small sofa while she settled into a chair across from them. "Thank you for receiving us, Laura," said Mrs. Miller gently. "I know you've been through a lot, but we need to know the truth about Alex's child." Laura nodded, breathing deeply before starting. "Yes, it's true. Addison tried to force me to abort, but I couldn't do it. I knew Alex wanted this baby, and so did I, so I escaped and have been hiding ever since." Mrs. Miller felt deep admiration for Laura's bravery. "Laura, you're not alone in this, and I want to help you and the baby. My home is your home if you choose to." Laura looked at Mrs. Miller with gratitude and relief. "Thank you, Claire. You don't know how much this means to me. I was so scared and alone, but now I feel like everything can get better." Carlos intervened, moved by the determination of both women. "We'll do everything we can to make sure you two are safe and well cared for. I won't let Addison or anyone else hurt you." With a new sense of purpose and a strengthened alliance, Mrs. Miller, Laura, and Carlos prepared for what was to come. They knew the road would be difficult, but they were determined to protect Alex's baby and create a better life for him. With mutual support and firm determination, they began to map out their plan for the future, knowing that together they could overcome any obstacle. And so in that modest apartment a new bond was formed, uniting their lives in a common mission of love, protection, and hope. Laura woke up the next day with a mixture of relief and anxiety. Mrs. Miller's offer had given her a hope she hadn't felt in a long time, but she also knew the road ahead would not be easy. Mrs. Miller and Carlos had stayed with her until late, discussing the details of their plan to leave the small apartment and move to the village. The sun was just beginning to rise when Mrs. Miller and Carlos arrived again at Laura's apartment. They brought with them some boxes and bags to pack Laura's belongings, which were few but valuable to her. Laura greeted them with a shy smile, grateful for their help. "Good morning, Laura. Ready to start?" asked Mrs. Miller with a warmth that comforted Laura. "Yes, I'm ready. Thank you for doing this for me and the baby," Laura replied, feeling a wave of emotion as she thought about the future that awaited them. Together, they began to pack Laura's few things. Mrs. Miller noticed that the young woman had a lot of photos and mementos, many of which were of Alex. Laura explained that she had kept everything she had of Alex as a reminder of his kindness and love. "He was an amazing man," Laura said with tears in her eyes. "He treated me with so much respect and kindness. I never wanted things to end this way." Mrs. Miller nodded, feeling the shared pain. "I know, Laura. Alex was a special person. Now, we will do everything we can to honor his memory and take care of his child." After several hours of work, the boxes were packed and ready to be moved. Carlos had managed to get a small truck to transport everything to the village, and with his help, they loaded all of Laura's belongings. The journey to the village was long, but there was a sense of relief and hope in the air. During the trip, Mrs. Miller and Laura talked about their lives and shared stories of Alex. The connection between them grew stronger with each word, creating a bond that went beyond simple circumstances. Finally, they arrived at the small village that Mrs. Miller called home. It was a picturesque place, with cobblestone streets and colorful houses. The fresh, clean air was a welcome change after the pollution and noise of the city. Laura looked around, feeling a sense of peace she hadn't felt in a long time. Mrs. Miller's house was cozy and full of rustic charm. It had a well-kept garden in the front and a small vegetable patch in the back. As they entered, Laura was greeted by a warm and homely atmosphere, with antique furniture and family photographs adorning the walls. "Welcome to your new home, Laura," Mrs. Miller said with a smile. "I hope you feel comfortable here." "It's wonderful, Claire. Thank you for opening your home to me," Laura replied gratefully. They spent the rest of the day unpacking and organizing Laura's things. Mrs. Miller had prepared a cozy room for Laura and the baby, with a crib and toys she had saved since Alex was small. Seeing Alex's old toys filled Mrs. Miller with emotion, making her feel more connected to her son through this gesture of love. As night approached, Laura felt more relaxed and secure. Mrs. Miller prepared a simple yet delicious dinner, and they sat together at the kitchen table, sharing a meal for the first time as a new family. "Claire, I don't know how to thank you for everything you've done for me. You've given me a chance I never thought I would have," Laura said sincerely. "You don't need to thank me, Laura. Alex would want us to do this. We are in this together, and we will do everything possible to ensure you and the baby have the life you deserve," Mrs. Miller replied firmly. That night, Laura lay down in her new bed feeling safer and more hopeful than she had in a long time. Mrs. Miller, for her part, felt comforted knowing she was fulfilling the promise she had made to her son. Although the pain of her loss remained, she had found a new purpose in caring for Laura and the baby. As the house settled into the silence of the night, both women prepared to face the challenges that still awaited them, knowing that together they could overcome any obstacle. With determination and love, they were starting a new chapter in their lives, united by the memory of Alex and the hope of a better future. The first dawn in the village brought a sense of renewal. Laura woke to the sound of birds singing and the fresh scent of the countryside. Sunlight streamed through the window, filling the room with a warm glow. Laura got up carefully, remembering that she was now in a safe place thanks to Mrs. Miller's kindness. Meanwhile, Claire Miller was in the kitchen preparing breakfast. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee and toasted bread filled the house, creating a welcoming atmosphere. Hearing Laura's footsteps, Claire smiled and greeted her cheerfully. "Good morning, Laura. I hope you slept well. I've made some breakfast for us," Claire said as she set the table. "Good morning, Claire. I slept very well, thank you. I haven't felt this peaceful in a long time," Laura replied gratefully. They sat together to have breakfast, enjoying the food and each other's company. It was a simple scene, but full of meaning for both of them. Laura felt increasingly part of this new family, and Claire found solace in caring for her and the future baby. After breakfast, they decided to go for a walk around the village. Claire wanted to show Laura around and introduce her to some of the neighbors. They walked along the cobblestone streets, admiring the colorful houses and well-kept gardens. The village was small but vibrant, with a close-knit and friendly community. Claire and Laura passed through the main square, where there was a small market full of fresh produce and local crafts. The vendors greeted Claire warmly, showing the respect and affection they had for her. "Good morning, Claire. Who is your young friend?" asked one of the vendors, an older man with a straw hat. "Good morning, Roberto. This is Laura, a friend who will be living with me for a while. I'm showing her around the village," Claire replied with a smile. "Nice to meet you, Laura. Welcome to the village. If you need anything, don't hesitate to ask," Roberto said kindly. "Thank you, Roberto. It's a pleasure to meet you," Laura responded, feeling more welcomed. As they continued their walk, Claire introduced Laura to more neighbors, who were all equally welcoming and kind. Laura realized she had come to a place where the community cared for each other, a refreshing contrast to the coldness and danger she had experienced in the city. Upon returning home, Claire suggested they start organizing the baby's room. Laura eagerly agreed, and together they spent the afternoon decorating and arranging the small room. Claire had saved some of Alex's toys and furniture, and seeing them again brought a mix of nostalgia and joy. This was Alex's favorite teddy bear. "He took it everywhere," Claire said, holding up an old, worn teddy bear filled with memories. "It's beautiful, Claire. I'm sure the baby will love it as much as Alex did," Laura replied with a smile. As they worked, they shared stories and laughter, strengthening their bond. Claire told Laura about life in the village, its traditions and festivities, and Laura shared more about her life before meeting Alex. Both women found comfort and support in their conversations, creating a solid foundation for their new life together. At the end of the day, the baby's room was ready. Claire and Laura stood admiring their work, feeling satisfied and hopeful. They had transformed the small room into a warm and cozy space, filled with love and expectations for the future. "It's perfect, Claire. I can't wait for the baby to arrive and see all this," Laura said, excited. "Yes, it's wonderful. I'm sure Alex would be very happy to see all this," Claire replied, a tear of happiness in her eye. That night, as they prepared for bed, Claire and Laura felt a deep peace. They knew the road ahead would not be easy, but they were confident that together they could face any challenge. With love and determination, they were building a better future, honoring Alex's memory, and preparing to welcome a new life into the world. As the house settled into the silence of the night, Claire and Laura fell asleep with hope and the certainty that, despite the difficulties, they were on the right path. United by love and resilience, they were creating a home where life and love could flourish again. Life in the village began to take on a tranquil and comforting rhythm for Claire and Laura. Each day was filled with small moments that reminded them they were on the right path. The sun shone warmly over the village, and the fresh morning air brought with it the promise of new beginnings. One of the first tasks Claire and Laura undertook together was organizing the garden and vegetable patch. Claire had kept the garden meticulously, but now, with Laura's help, they decided to plant new flowers and vegetables. Working in the garden not only provided them with fresh food, but also gave them a sense of purpose and connection to the land. One morning, as they worked together, Claire noticed the serene smile on Laura's face. "It looks like you're enjoying the work in the garden," she commented with a smile. "Yes, Claire, it's very therapeutic. It helps clear my mind and makes me feel more connected to this place," Laura replied, as she planted a row of tomatoes. Besides the garden, Claire made it a point to show Laura the different activities in the village. She took her to the local bakery where they met Doña Marta, a robust woman with a cheerful demeanor who offered them freshly baked bread and cookies. "Welcome to the village, Laura. I hope you enjoy our treats," Doña Marta said with a warm smile. "Thank you, Doña Marta. Everything smells delicious," Laura replied, feeling more and more a part of the community. Each interaction with the neighbors reinforced the sense of belonging and support. The community rallied around Claire and Laura, offering help and unconditional friendship. The neighbors invited them to local events and were always willing to lend a hand when needed. One afternoon, Claire and Laura attended a community gathering in the main square. The event was filled with music, laughter, and activities for all ages. Children ran and played while adults chatted and shared stories. Claire introduced Laura to many of the village residents, and each introduction was an opportunity to strengthen their ties with the community. The neighbors were interested and supportive, asking about Laura's well-being and offering their friendship. "Laura, this is Pedro, the village blacksmith. He's been a friend of the family for many years," Claire said, introducing a robust man with a big smile. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Laura. If you ever need anything, don't hesitate to ask," Pedro said, shaking Laura's hand warmly. "Thank you, Pedro. I really appreciate your kindness," Laura replied, feeling more welcomed with each new friendly face. Daily life in the village also brought moments of intimacy and growth for Claire and Laura. They spent afternoons in the kitchen, preparing meals together and sharing recipes. Claire taught Laura her favorite dishes, passing down her family's culinary traditions. One afternoon, as they cook it together, Laura confided her fears and insecurities about being a mother. "Clary, I'm afraid I won't be up to the task, that I won't be able to give the baby everything he needs," Laura said, her voice trembling. Claire looked at her tenderly and took her hand. "Laura, being a mother isn't easy, but you have a heart full of love, and that's the most important thing. You won't be alone in this. I'll be by your side, and together we will care for that baby." Claire's words were a balm for Laura's soul, who felt comforted and more confident in her ability to face the challenges of motherhood. The relationship between the two women grew stronger each day, creating an unbreakable bond based on trust and mutual support. As the baby's due date approached, the anticipation and excitement grew. Claire and Laura prepared meticulously, ensuring everything was ready to welcome the new family member. The community also rallied around them, offering gifts and support at every turn. One day, while walking through the village, they encountered a group of neighbors who had prepared a surprise for them. They had organized a small celebration in honor of the upcoming birth, decorating the square with balloons and banners. "We wanted to show you how much you mean to us and how much we look forward to the baby's arrival," Doña Marta said, handing them a cake decorated with great care. Claire and Laura were overwhelmed by the generosity and love of the community. "Thank you all. We have no words to express how grateful we are," Claire said, tears of happiness in her eyes. The celebration was a success, filled with laughter, music, and delicious food. Claire and Laura felt surrounded by love and support, more convinced than ever that they had found a home in the village. That night, as Claire and Laura prepared for bed, they reflected on the changes in their lives. "We've come a long way, Laura. I'm so proud of you and what we've accomplished together," Claire said, hugging Laura tenderly. "Thank you, Claire. I couldn't have done it without you. I'm so grateful for everything," Laura replied, moved. As the house settled into the silence of the night, both women fell asleep with the certainty that, despite the difficulties, they were creating a life filled with love, hope, and new opportunities. United by Alex's memory and the baby's future, Claire and Laura prepared to face whatever came their way, knowing that together they could overcome any obstacle. With each passing day, life in the village became more harmonious and meaningful for Claire and Laura. The community had welcomed them with open arms, and they reciprocated by actively participating in local activities and offering their help to those in need. One morning, Claire and Laura decided to visit the village community center. They had heard that volunteers were needed to organize a charity event to raise funds for needy families. Upon arrival, they were greeted by Sophia, the energetic and big-hearted coordinator of the center. "Claire, Laura, so good to see you. Just in time to help us," Sophia said with a smile. "We're planning a community fair and need all the help we can get." "We'd love to help, Sophia. What can we do?" Claire replied, always willing to lend a hand. Sophia explained the details of the event and assigned specific tasks to each of them. Claire took charge of coordinating donations and organizing an auction of handmade items donated by the neighbors. Laura, on the other hand, offered to help with logistics and to prepare some of the dishes that would be served at the fair. In the weeks that followed, Claire and Laura worked tirelessly alongside the other volunteers. The community came together impressively, demonstrating that when everyone collaborates, great things can be achieved. The village streets were filled with activity and enthusiasm as the preparations progressed. On the day of the fair, the village was filled with colors and joy. The stalls were decorated with flags and balloons, and the aroma of freshly made food filled the air. Claire and Laura moved around, ensuring everything was in order. The auction was a resounding success. Claire, with her ability to connect with people, managed to get many items sold at high prices, raising a considerable amount for the charity fund. Laura, meanwhile, was busy in the kitchen, carefully preparing her dishes and delighting everyone with her culinary skills. During the fair, Claire noticed Laura smiling more often and relaxing in the company of the neighbors. It was evident that the young woman was finding her place in the community and feeling more and more at home. Seeing Laura so happy and adapted filled Claire's heart with joy. At the end of the event, Sophia approached Claire and Laura, visibly moved. "I have no words to thank you for everything you've done. The fair has been a success, and we've raised more than we expected. Thank you, really." "It's been a pleasure, Sophia. We're happy to contribute and be part of this wonderful community," Claire replied with a sincere smile. Yes, Sophia, thank you for giving us the opportunity to help. It's been an incredible experience, Laura added, feeling proud of her contribution. That night after the fair, Claire and Laura returned home exhausted but full of satisfaction. While having dinner together, they reflected on the importance of community and the power of teamwork. Today has been a wonderful day. Seeing how everyone came together to help has given me a new perspective on life in the village, said Laura with a smile. That's right, Laura. The community is a source of strength and support. Together we can achieve much more than we could alone, Claire replied wisely. Weeks went by and Claire and Laura continued to integrate into village life. Claire dedicated herself to her garden and small vegetable patch, while Laura began looking for ways to contribute even more to the community. She decided to open a small pastry shop in her home, where she sold her delicious cakes and cookies. The shop soon became a popular meeting point in the village, attracting both neighbors and visitors. The success of Laura's pastry shop was a testament to her talent and dedication. Claire supported her at every moment, helping with sales and offering her advice. The joint work further strengthened their relationship, and both felt more connected and fulfilled. One day, while tending the shop, an elderly woman approached Laura. It was Doña Addison, one of the village's oldest residents, known for her wisdom and experience. Laura, your cakes are delicious. They remind me of the ones my grandmother used to make, said Doña Addison with a nostalgic smile. Thank you, Doña Addison. It's an honor to hear that, Laura replied, touched. You know, dear, I've seen many things in my life, and I want you to know that you are doing a wonderful job here. You are a blessing to our community, continued Doña Addison. Doña Addison's words deeply moved Laura, who felt a wave of gratitude and humility. Thank you, Doña Addison. I am very grateful to be here and to be able to contribute in some way. That night, Laura shared the conversation with Claire, who felt equally excited and proud. You are doing very well, Laura. Alex would be very proud of you, said Claire, with tears of happiness in her eyes. As life in the village continued, Claire and Laura faced challenges, but always with the certainty that they had the support of the community. Each day brought new opportunities to grow and learn, and both women felt stronger and more connected than ever. With time, Laura and Claire not only found a home in the village, but also a family. The community became their support network, and together they faced adversity with courage and love. United by the memory of Alex and the future of the baby, Claire and Laura prepared to face whatever came, knowing that together they could overcome any obstacle. As the house settled into the silence of the night, Claire and Laura fell asleep with the certainty that, despite the difficulties, they were creating a life full of love, hope, and new opportunities. United by the memory of Alex and the future of the baby, Claire and Laura prepared to face whatever came, knowing that together they could overcome any obstacle. The weeks turned into months, and Laura's pastry shop had become a success in the village. Meanwhile, Claire also found new energy and decided to open a small bookstore in the village, something she had always dreamed of. With the support of Carlos and the community, the bookstore became a meeting point for the neighbors, a place where stories of pain and overcoming found a space to be shared and valued. The bookstore was a cozy refuge with shelves full of books, a comfortable reading nook, and a small cafe where Laura served her delights. The community embraced Claire's initiative, and the bookstore was filled with life and laughter. One day, while Claire and Laura were working in the bookstore, Addison appeared unexpectedly. She had heard rumors about Laura and Claire's life in the village, and envy and resentment began to consume her. Seeing them together, happy and surrounded by support, made her own life, full of problems and resentment, even more unbearable. So here you are, hiding and living happily, said Addison with a bitter smile. I can't believe how well things have gone for you. Claire stood up, trying to stay calm. Addison, what are you doing here? You are not welcome. I just came to see how you're doing, replied Addison coldly. But don't worry, I won't stay long. Addison left the bookstore, but the seed of revenge was already planted in her mind. Determined to ruin Claire and Laura's happiness, she began to devise a plan to ensure Laura's baby would not be born. That same night, in a fit of madness, Addison decided to act. She knew that Laura usually took walks around the village in the afternoon, and she planned to intercept her. She filled a syringe with a harmful substance, determined to inject it into Laura without anyone noticing. The next day, Laura went out for her usual walk around the village, enjoying the fresh air and tranquility. Addison followed her at a safe distance, waiting for the right moment to attack. Just as Laura was passing through a secluded alley, Addison saw her opportunity. "Laura, wait!" Addison shouted, pretending to use a kind voice. Laura turned, surprised to see Addison. "What are you doing here?" "I just wanted to talk to you," Addison said, approaching quickly. Before Laura could react, Addison pulled out the syringe and tried to inject it into Laura's arm. Laura, terrified, tried to fight back, but Addison was stronger at that moment. In the struggle, Laura fell to the ground, screaming in pain. Laura's screams attracted the attention of some neighbors who ran to help her. Addison, seeing her plan thwarted, fled before they could stop her. The neighbors quickly took Laura to the village clinic, fearing for her well-being and that of the baby. Claire, upon hearing what had happened, ran to the clinic with her heart in her throat. She found Laura on a stretcher, scared and in pain, but fortunately, the doctor assured her that the baby was safe for the moment. They needed to do further tests to see if there had been any internal damage. The attack and the news had left Laura with deep fear and anxiety. "Laura, I'm here," said Claire, taking Laura's hand. "Everything will be fine. I'm with you." Laura broke down in tears, feeling vulnerable and terrified. "Claire, I thought I was going to lose the baby. Addison. She tried to hurt us." "I know, Laura, I know, but we're safe now. I won't let anything happen to you or the baby," Claire replied firmly, trying to comfort her. That night, while Laura rested in the clinic under observation, Claire sat beside her, watching over her. She felt a mix of sadness and fury, angry about Addison's attack and worried about Laura's emotional state. Carlos arrived at the clinic shortly after, visibly concerned. "Claire, how is Laura?" "The baby is fine for now, thank God, but Laura is traumatized. Addison tried to inject her with something," Claire explained, with tears in her eyes. "This cannot go unpunished. Addison must face the consequences of her actions," said Carlos, determined. The following days were difficult for Claire and Laura. Although physically recovered, Laura was emotionally shattered. Addison's attack had left a deep scar on her spirit, filling her with fear and anxiety. The community, upon hearing what had happened, showed their unconditional support. Neighbors visited Laura, offering words of comfort and assuring her she was not alone. Despite the pain, Laura felt strengthened by the love and support she received. "Laura, you are strong. Don't let Addison take away the joy of expecting your baby," Doña Marta told her, hugging her warmly. Claire also struggled with her own emotions. Seeing Laura so affected filled her with sadness and frustration. She spent sleepless nights worrying about Laura and the baby's well-being, wondering how they could overcome this new obstacle. However, Claire refused to give up. She knew she had to be strong for Laura and the baby. With Carlos and the community's support, they began to take measures to protect Laura and ensure Addison faced justice for her actions. "We will get through this, Laura. You are not alone. Together we will face any challenge," said Claire, with a firm voice, while holding Laura's hand. And so, in the midst of pain and adversity, Claire and Laura found the strength to move forward, knowing that with love and mutual support, they could overcome any obstacle and protect the baby they were so eagerly waiting for. The news of Addison's attack on Laura spread quickly throughout the village and beyond. When Addison returned to the city, she found a very different reception than she had imagined. Her husband, Liam, had received multiple calls and messages informing him of the atrocity his wife had committed. Disbelief and rage overcame him. One night, when Addison arrived home, she found Liam waiting for her in the living room, with a look of contained fury. Addison tried to ignore him, but Liam was not willing to let it go. "Addison, we need to talk," Liam said in a tense voice. Addison stopped in her tracks, feeling a stab of fear. "About what?" "About what you did, Addison. You attacked Laura, you tried to harm a pregnant woman. How could you do something so monstrous?" Liam raised his voice, his eyes blazing with indignation. Addison tried to defend herself, but the words failed her. I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't lie, the whole city knows. You tried to inject Laura with something. You endangered her baby. You are a miserable person, Addison. How did you become this way?" Liam could not contain his anger. Liam's words fell like a slab on Addison. She knew she had made a terrible mistake, but facing the real consequences was another matter. Liam, I just was so full of rage. I didn't want her to have what I couldn't. Liam looked at her with a mix of pity and contempt. That's no excuse for what you did. You've destroyed any respect I might have had for you. I'm leaving. I can't keep living with someone capable of such cruelty. Addison felt the ground open up beneath her feet. Liam, please, don't leave me. Liam shook his head, his decision irrevocable. There's nothing more to say, Addison. I hope someday you realize what you've done and change, but I can't be part of your life while you are this way. With those words, Liam gathered his things and left, leaving Addison alone, facing the bitter reality of her own misery. The lesson Liam had given her resonated in her mind. She was the author of her own destruction. Meanwhile, at the village hospital, Laura was going through a critical moment. Although the baby had survived the attack, the doctors discovered complications. The baby's health was delicate, and there was considerable risk it might not be born normally. Claire, who had been by Laura's side the whole time, felt her heart break upon hearing the news. The possibility of losing her grandchild plunged her into deep sadness and anxiety. But she knew she had to be strong for Laura, who was devastated. One night while Laura slept, Claire sat by the hospital window, reflecting on everything that had happened. She wondered how they had reached this point and how they could overcome it. Please, God, Claire whispered, tears in her eyes, don't let us lose this baby. We've been through so much. Alex, if you can hear me, watch over your child from wherever you are. The fear of losing her grandchild led her to a deep process of reflection. She remembered Alex, his kindness, his bravery, and his unconditional love. She knew she had to find the strength to go on, not just for Laura and the baby, but also to honor her son's memory. As Claire gazed at the stars from the hospital window, she felt a strange calm. She knew she couldn't control what happened, but she could be there for Laura, supporting her every step of the way. The next morning, Claire woke Laura with a comforting hug. Laura, you are not alone in this. Whatever happens, we are together. Laura, with eyes full of tears, nodded. Thank you, Claire. I don't know what I would do without you. The following days were a mix of uncertainty and hope. The doctors closely monitored Laura and the baby's health, doing everything possible to ensure the best outcome. Claire and Laura supported each other, finding comfort in their bond and the community that continued to show them love and support. Every visit from the neighbors, every word of encouragement, reinforced their determination to move forward. The bookstore and pastry shop became symbols of hope, reminders that, despite difficulties, they could find the strength to continue. And so, as life continued in the village, Claire and Laura prepared to face the challenges that still awaited them, knowing that, with mutual support and the strength of the community, they could overcome any obstacle and protect the baby they were so eagerly waiting for. Addison's life had crumbled in a way she had never imagined. After Liam left her, Addison found herself completely alone, facing the consequences of her actions without anyone's support. Her friends and family, upon learning what she had done, avoided her, unable to understand how she had become so cruel. Addison moved to a small, gloomy apartment in a less affluent part of the city. The bare walls and dim lighting reflected her mood. She spent her days in a state of despondency, not knowing what to do with her life. Loneliness and remorse slowly consumed her, leading her into a spiral of depression. Every time she looked at her reflection in the mirror, Addison barely recognized the woman she saw. The deep, dark circles under her eyes, her pale face, and the empty look in her eyes were testament to her suffering. Liam's words echoed in her mind over and over again. You are a miserable person. With no one to talk to, Addison found herself facing her own demons. The nights were the worst, filled with insomnia and silent tears. She wondered how she had reached this point, remembering the times when she had been happy and questioning where everything had gone wrong. One day, while wandering aimlessly through the city streets, Addison passed by a church. She felt a strange need to enter, and without much thought crossed the doors. The interior of the church was silent, only broken by the soft murmur of a distant prayer. Addison sat on a pew and closed her eyes, letting the tears flow freely. For the first time in a long time, she began to deeply reflect on her actions and their consequences. She realized that her rage and envy had led her to commit despicable acts, and that she needed to face her own misery if she wanted to find some kind of redemption. Meanwhile, at the village hospital, Laura and her baby's condition was slowly improving. After days of intense monitoring and care, the doctors noticed that the baby's vital signs were starting to stabilize. Each small progress was a source of hope for Claire and Laura. One morning, the head doctor, Dr. Hernandez, entered the room with an encouraging smile. "Laura, Claire, I have good news. The baby's vital signs are normalizing. It looks like our little fighter is recovering well." Dr. Hernandez's words filled the room with joy and relief. Claire hugged Laura, tears of happiness streaming down her cheeks. "Thank God, Laura. Our baby is going to be fine." Laura, still weak but visibly excited, smiled gratefully. "I don't know how to thank everyone. It has been a miracle." The baby's return to normal vital signs brought a new air of hope to their lives. The village community, which had been closely following the situation, joined in celebration. Neighbors brought food, flowers, and small gifts for Laura and the baby, once again demonstrating their unwavering support. Carlos, who had been a constant pillar of support, arrived at the hospital with a bouquet of flowers and a big smile. "I knew everything would turn out well. This little one has Alex's strength and your determination." Laura and Claire laughed through their tears, grateful to have someone like Carlos in their lives. The atmosphere in the hospital filled with a sense of community and love, reinforcing the bonds that had been created during the darkest moments. Days later, when Laura was finally discharged, they returned home with a new perspective and renewed hope. The house filled with preparations for the baby's arrival, and each day became a celebration of life and resilience. Meanwhile, Addison, in her process of reflection, began to attend church regularly. She found comfort in the priest's words, who offered her a perspective on forgiveness and redemption. Although she knew she had a long road ahead, Addison began to take small steps to confront her mistakes and seek true change in her life. One afternoon, after a long talk with the priest, Addison decided to write a letter to Claire and Laura. She did not expect to be forgiven, but she wanted to express her remorse and take responsibility for her actions. With trembling hands, she wrote the words she had kept in her heart for so long. "Claire and Laura, I do not expect you to forgive me, but I feel the need to say how deeply sorry I am for all the harm I have caused you. My envy and anger led me to act inexcusably, and I have paid the price of my misery. There is no justification for my actions, and I regret putting your baby's life in danger. I know these words cannot erase what I have done, but I want you to know that I am seeking a way to change and redeem myself. I hope that someday you can find in your hearts a space to forgive me, though I know it will not be easy. With deep remorse, and Addison." The letter was a small step, but for Addison it meant the beginning of a long road to redemption. As she sent the letter, she promised herself that she would do everything possible to become a better person, one that Alex could have respected. In Claire and Laura's home, life continued with renewed joy. Each day was a step forward, filled with love and hope. Claire, looking to the future with optimism, knew they had gone through a difficult test, but emerged stronger. And so, as the sun set over the small village, Claire and Laura prepared for a bright future, surrounded by love, and with the certainty that, no matter the challenges they faced, they would always have the support of their community and the strength of their unbreakable bond. Leaving the hospital marked a new beginning for Laura and Claire. The news of the baby's recovery and Laura's discharge spread quickly through the village, filling all the neighbors who had been following and supporting them with joy. The return home was an emotional moment, full of hope and gratitude. Upon arriving home, Claire helped Laura settle in comfortably. The baby's room, which they had prepared with so much love, was now a symbol of overcoming and better times to come. Laura sat in the rocking chair in the room, looking at every detail with eyes filled with tears of happiness. "Claire, I don't know how to thank you for everything you've done for me and the baby," Laura said, holding Claire's hand with affection. "You are a blessing in my life." Claire smiled, moved. "Laura, you are part of my family. Alex would be very proud of you. This baby is going to be a miracle in our lives, and I am grateful to share this moment with you." The following days were filled with preparations and anticipation Claire and Laura focused on the upcoming birth of the baby, ensuring everything was ready. The village community continued to show their support constantly, bringing gifts, food, and offering their help in any way needed. One afternoon, while Claire and Laura were organizing the baby's clothes, they received a visit from Doña Marta and Sofia. Both women arrived with a basket full of handmade blankets and other gifts. "Dear ones, we thought this might be useful for the baby," said Doña Marta, handing them the basket with a smile. "Thank you, Doña Marta, it's wonderful. The baby will be very warm with these blankets," Laura responded gratefully. "We want you to know that we are here for you any time," added Sofia. "The community is very excited about the baby's arrival. It has been a difficult journey, but you have shown incredible strength." Claire and Laura felt deeply grateful for the constant support of their friends and neighbors. Every gesture, no matter how small, reminded them that they were not alone and that they could count on a network of people who cared about them. The bond between Claire and Laura grew stronger every day. They spent hours talking, sharing stories, and dreaming about the future. Claire told Laura anecdotes about Alex, filling the house with memories of her son and keeping his memory alive. One morning, while they were having tea in the garden, Laura expressed her deepest thoughts. "Claire, sometimes I wonder what the future will be like for me and the baby. I want to be the best mother possible, but I'm also afraid of not being up to the task." Claire took her hand, offering comfort. "Laura, those fears are normal. Being a mother is not easy, but you have a heart full of love, and that's the most important thing. Alex would be very proud of you. Together we will care for this baby and give him all the love and security he needs." Claire's words instilled renewed confidence in Laura. She knew that with Claire and the community's support, she could face any challenge. Claire's presence was a fundamental pillar in her life, providing the strength and serenity she needed. Over time, Laura began to experience an inner peace she hadn't felt in a long time. The shadows of the past started to fade, and her focus was entirely on the future and the baby's arrival. Every kick, every movement of the baby in her womb was a reminder of life and the love that united them. The preparations continued, and the house filled with positive and joyful energy. Claire and Laura decorated the garden with lights and flowers, preparing for a small celebration with the community in honor of the baby's upcoming birth. They wanted to share their joy and gratitude with all those who had stood by them during the toughest times. The day of the celebration arrived, and Claire and Laura's house filled with laughter and lively conversations. The neighbors brought delicious dishes and gifts for the baby, creating a festive and warm atmosphere. Carlos, always an unconditional support, gave an emotional speech highlighting Claire and Laura's strength and resilience. Today we celebrate not only the arrival of a new member to our community, but also the unwavering love and courage of these two wonderful women. Claire and Laura have shown us that, even in the darkest moments, hope and love can prevail. We are grateful to have them in our lives, Carlos said, moved. The celebration continued until late into the night, filled with music, dancing, and joy. Claire and Laura felt surrounded by love and support, more convinced than ever that they had found a home and a family in the village. That night, as Claire and Laura rested after the celebration, they felt a deep peace. The journey had been difficult, but now they were ready to face the future with hope and determination. The baby's upcoming birth would not only be a new beginning for Laura, but also a continuation of Alex's legacy, filled with love and kindness. As the house settled into the silence of the night, Claire and Laura lay down with a sense of gratitude and anticipation. They knew that no matter what the future held, they would face each challenge together, with the support of their community and the strength of their unbreakable bond. The wait finally came to an end. Early one morning, Laura woke up with intense and sudden pain. She immediately knew that the time had come. With her heart racing, she called out to Claire, who rushed to her side. "Claire, I think it's time," Laura said, breathing heavily between contractions. Claire, though nervous, remained calm. "Let's go, Laura. We need to get to the hospital. Carlos is already on his way with the car." The drive to the hospital was quick but tense. Laura's contractions became more frequent and intense, and Claire held her, offering support and words of encouragement. Upon arrival at the hospital, the medical staff immediately attended to them, taking Laura to a delivery room. The atmosphere in the delivery room was a whirlwind of activity. The nurses and doctor worked efficiently, monitoring every detail. Claire stayed by Laura's side, holding her hand tightly, conveying all the serenity and love she could. "Breathe, Laura. Everything is going to be fine," Claire said, stroking Laura's hair. The hours passed slowly, each minute filled with effort and pain. Laura, though exhausted, showed incredible determination. She knew she was about to bring a new life into the world, and that gave her the strength to keep going. In the midst of exhaustion and pain, Laura closed her eyes for a moment, seeking a brief respite. At that instant, she felt a warm and familiar presence. She opened her eyes, and for a brief moment saw Alex standing next to the bed, looking at her with love and pride. His figure seemed luminous and ethereal, like an angel watching from beyond. "Laura, I'm here with you," Alex said, his voice soft and comforting. "You are strong and brave. Our baby is going to be fine. I am so proud of you." Alex's words gave Laura a renewed wave of energy and determination. With tears in her eyes, she nodded, knowing she had the strength needed to complete this miracle. The critical moment arrived. The doctor gave the final instructions, and Laura, with a final cry of effort, brought her son into the world. The newborn's cry filled the room, a sound that resonated like a celestial melody for all present. "It's a boy," announced the doctor with a smile, handing the baby to the nurses to be cleaned and checked. Claire, her heart full of emotion, looked at Laura with tears of happiness. "You did it, Laura. Our little one is here." The nurses wrapped the baby in a blanket and handed him to Laura. Feeling the warm weight of the newborn in her arms, Laura broke down in tears, but this time out of pure joy. She looked at her son's tiny face, feeling an immediate and deep connection. "Hello, my love," Laura whispered, her voice trembling. "I love you so much." Claire, standing next to Laura, gently stroked the baby's head. "He is perfect, Laura. Alex would be so proud." At that moment, Laura looked towards where she had seen Alex before, and although his figure was no longer visible, she felt his presence deeply in her heart. She knew he was there, watching and caring for them from beyond. The following hours were a whirlwind of emotions and visits from the village community. Carlos was one of the first to arrive, bringing flowers and gifts for the newborn. The neighbors took turns congratulating Laura and Claire, filling the room with love and joy. "This little one is a miracle," said Doña Marta with tears in her eyes as she held the baby. "He is a symbol of hope for all of us." Naming the baby was a natural choice. Claire and Laura, without hesitation, decided to name him Alex, in honor of the man who had been a light in their lives and whose legacy lived on in the little one. During the first night at the hospital, while Laura rested with the baby in her arms, Claire sat in a chair next to the bed, watching them with love and gratitude. Life had been hard and full of trials, but at that moment all the suffering seemed worth it. That night Claire had a dream. In it she saw Alex again, this time in a meadow full of flowers, smiling and holding the baby in his arms. "Thank you, Mom," Alex said, his voice full of love. "Thank you for taking care of Laura and our son. I will always be with you." Upon waking, Claire felt a deep peace and certainty that, despite the challenges, everything would be all right. Alex was with them, guiding and protecting them. The following days were filled with happiness and new beginnings. Laura and little Alex were discharged, and upon arriving home, they found the house decorated with balloons and welcome banners prepared by the neighbors. The community had gathered to celebrate the new member's arrival, filling the home with laughter and love. Claire, Laura, and little Alex quickly adapted to their new life together. Each day was filled with moments of joy and discovery, strengthening the bond between them and the community that surrounded them. In the midst of this new stage, Claire reflected on all they had been through and how they had gotten here. She knew that, no matter the future challenges, they would always have the strength and love needed to face them together. As the sun set over the small village, Claire, Laura, and little Alex snuggled on the sofa, enjoying the tranquility of the moment. Life, though sometimes difficult, was full of miracles and second chances. And so, in the warmth of their home, they found the peace and happiness they had longed for, knowing that Alex's love would always be with them, guiding and protecting them from beyond. As Claire enjoyed their new life with little Alex, Addison found herself in a downward spiral. Her life, once filled with luxuries and superficialities, now crumbled around her. Addison was living in a small, desolate apartment, far from the comfort she was accustomed to. Her days were and lonely, filled with reflection. Every morning, Addison woke up with a sense of emptiness. Her attempts at redemption had led her down a solitary path, without the support of those who once surrounded her. Liam's words and the community's rejection haunted her constantly, reminding her of the price of her actions. One afternoon, while Addison was walking through the city streets, she encountered an old friend, Marie. Marie had heard the rumors about Addison, but decided to approach her with a mix of curiosity and concern. "Addison, is that you?" asked Marie with a mixture of surprise and compassion. Addison looked up, recognizing her friend. "Yes, Marie, it's me." "What happened to you? You don't look the same," said Marie, noticing the drastic change in Addison's appearance. "Things haven't gone well," Addison replied with a sigh. "I've made many mistakes, and now I'm paying the price." Marie looked at her with sadness. "Addison, we all make mistakes, but there's always a chance to change. Have you thought about seeking help?" Addison nodded slowly. "I've tried, Marie. I go to church and talk to the priest, but it's hard. I feel so lost." Marie offered her a hug, reminding her that she was not completely alone. "It's not easy, Addison, but the first step is recognizing your mistakes, and it seems you have already done that. The next step is to forgive yourself and work to improve." Marie's words resonated with Addison, giving her a small ray of hope. She decided to follow her friend's advice and seek professional help to deal with her depression and internal problems. Although the path would be long, Addison knew she had to try if she wanted to find some peace. Meanwhile, in the village, Laura and Claire focused on their new life with baby Alex. The days were filled with laughter, discoveries, and a deep family connection. Little Alex was growing healthy and strong, bringing immense joy to their lives. One afternoon, while Claire and Laura were in the bookstore, they received an unexpected visit. It was Liam, Addison's ex-husband. Claire recognized him immediately and approached him with curiosity and caution. "Liam, what brings you here?" asked Claire. "I wanted to talk to you and Laura," Liam replied, with a serious but respectful expression. "I heard about what Addison did and wanted to apologize on her behalf. I know nothing can justify her actions, but I wanted you to know that not everyone in our family supports what she did." Laura, though surprised, appreciated Liam's sincerity. "Thank you, Liam. We understand that it's not your fault what Addison did." Liam nodded, grateful for Laura's understanding. "I'm trying to help Addison find her way, but I also wanted to offer my support to you. If there is anything I can do, please let me know." Claire and Laura thanked Liam for his offer, feeling comforted by his gesture of kindness. The conversation reminded them that despite the difficulties, there were still people willing to support and offer their help. As time passed, life in the village continued to flourish. Claire and Laura devoted themselves to caring for little Alex, enjoying every moment of his growth. The community remained a constant source of love and support, and the bookstore had become a gathering place for everyone. Celebrations were common in Claire and Laura's lives. One of the most significant was the baptism of little Alex. The village church filled with friends and neighbors, all eager to be part of this important event. On the day of the baptism, the church was decorated with flowers and white ribbons. Claire and Laura, dressed elegantly, held little Alex, who wore an impeccable white suit. The ceremony was emotional, with the priest blessing the baby and the community joining in prayer. "Today we celebrate Alex's arrival into our community and our faith," said the priest. "This child is a symbol of hope and renewal for all of us." After the ceremony, everyone headed to the village square, where a party had been organized in Alex's honor. There were tables full of food, music, and laughter. Children ran and played while adults chatted and shared stories. Carlos, who had been an unwavering support, raised his glass and proposed a toast. "To Alex, Claire, and Laura, may their lives be full of love, health, and happiness, and may they always find support and friendship in this community." Everyone raised their glasses and toasted, celebrating the life and joy that Alex had brought to their lives. Claire and Laura, with tears of happiness, thanked everyone for their support and love. "This is just the beginning of a wonderful life for Alex," said Claire, looking at her grandson with love, "and I am so grateful to be able to share it with all of you." The party continued into the night, filled with music, dancing, and happiness. Claire, Laura, and Alex were surrounded by people who loved them, creating memories they would treasure forever. As time passed, everyday life in the village followed its course, filled with moments of joy and simplicity. Claire and Laura enjoyed every stage of Alex's growth, celebrating his first steps, his first words, and every little achievement. Visits from neighbors were frequent, bringing laughter and company. Doña Marta, Sofia, and other friends became part of Alex's extended family, always present to offer their support and love. On quiet nights, Claire often sat in the garden looking at the stars and remembering Alex's father. She felt his presence in every gentle breeze and every ray of sunshine, knowing he was always watching over them from beyond. "Thank you, Alex," Claire would whisper to the starry sky, "for giving us the strength to move forward and blessing us with this little miracle." And so, in the warmth of their home, and with the support of their community, Claire, Laura, and little Alex lived a life full of love, hope, and happiness. United by the memory of Alex and the unbreakable love that held them together, they faced the future with the certainty that together they could overcome any obstacle and celebrate every moment of their lives. Years passed and little Alex grew up, surrounded by love and care in the small village. He became a lively and curious boy with the same bright eyes and charming smile as his father, Alex. His presence in Claire and Laura's lives had been a constant source of joy and purpose. Alex, whom everyone in the village called Alejandrito, had become the favorite of the community. Everyone knew and loved him, and he, in turn, showed a kindness and affection that touched everyone. Claire and Laura watched with pride as the boy grew and flourished, reflecting the best of his father. One summer afternoon, Claire sat in her garden, enjoying the warm sun and the sound of birds singing. Alex played nearby, running and laughing with other village children. Laura was in the kitchen, preparing a snack for everyone. It was a perfect day, full of peace and satisfaction. As she watched Alex, Claire fell into deep reflection. She thought about everything she had lived through, from the painful loss of her son to the miracle of her grandson's birth. She remembered the moments of despair and the moments of hope, the tears and the laughter. Each memory was woven into the tapestry of her life, creating a rich and varied story. Claire realized how fortunate she was. She had had the opportunity to raise her son again, albeit in a different form. Alex lived on in his son, and every day spent with him was a precious gift. She felt a profound gratitude for life, for second chances, and for the love that surrounded her. As she reflected, Alex ran over, interrupting her thoughts. "Grandma, Grandma, look what I found," he said, showing a beautiful bouquet of wildflowers. Claire smiled and took the flowers tenderly. "They are beautiful, Alejandrito. Thank you, my love." Alex sat next to her, looking at the garden with curiosity. "Grandma, can you tell me the story of Daddy Alex again?" Claire gently stroked Alex's hair. "Of course, my dear. Your daddy was an incredible man, full of kindness and courage. He always helped others and had a big heart. And you, Alejandrito, have that same heart." Alex listened attentively, as he always did when Claire spoke of his father. The stories of Alex were a precious link between the past and the present, and Alex never tired of hearing them. As Claire spoke, she felt a wave of emotions. Her life had been a roller coaster, but at that moment, everything seemed to fit perfectly. She had found peace and happiness in her grandson, and she knew Alex was proud of them, watching over them from beyond. Laura came out of the house with a tray of cookies and lemonade, smiling at seeing Claire and Alex together. "What are you talking about?" she asked, joining them. "Grandma is telling me another story about Daddy Alex," Alex replied, taking a cookie from the tray. Laura sat next to Claire, sharing the same look of love and gratitude. "We are very lucky, Claire. Alex has left us an incredible legacy." Claire nodded, feeling tears of happiness stream down her cheeks. "Yes, Laura. Life has given us a wonderful gift. I have had the chance to raise my son again through our Alejandrito, and I couldn't be more grateful." The three of them sat in silence for a moment, enjoying the warmth of the sun and each other's company. In that instant, Claire felt a deep inner peace. She knew that despite all the difficulties, she had found renewed purpose and a new reason to live. As the sun set, Painting the sky with golden and pink hues, Claire, Laura, and Alex embraced, feeling the love and unity that kept them together. They knew that no matter what the future held, they would always have each other's support and affection. And so, in the warmth of their home, and with the promise of a bright future, Claire thanked life for the beautiful gift it had given her, the opportunity to raise her son Alex again, in the form of her beloved grandson. The story of her life, full of love, hope, and second chances, was completed with an ending full of peace and gratitude. As the stars began to shine in the night sky, Claire whispered one last prayer of thanks, sure that Alex was listening from beyond. "Thank you, my son, for everything." Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us in this incredible story of Claire, Laura, and little Alex. We hope you enjoyed every chapter. If you liked it, don't forget to give it a like, subscribe, and activate the bell so you don't miss any updates. Leave your comments below. We love reading them. See you in the next video with more exciting stories. Until next time.